Inside the Niger Delta.
Hello out there and welcome to the program. It's Inside the Niger Delta, the authentic voice of Nigeria's oil-rich region. I'm your regular host, Mahmoud Akuga. As part of efforts to address the twin challenges of poverty and underdevelopment bedeviling Nigeria's oil-rich Niger Delta region, the federal government in the year 2000 established the Niger Delta Development Commission, NDDC. The establishment of the NDDC was with a clear mandate to initiate and execute projects and programs to improve the lots of the largely impoverished communities and transform the region to become more politically stable and peaceful. In reality, however, the NDDC has failed to live up to the high expectations that greeted its establishment some 19 years ago, and this is the verdict of most Niger Deltans. In their reaction to a prolonged tax feud between the Rivers State Internal Revenue Service and the NDDC, some Niger Deltans recently lashed out at the Commission for allegedly abandoning a statutory mandate on the Niger Delta. Details of the ongoing tax feud are found in our cover story. And finally, this edition of the program is an interview with members of the Isoko Monitoring Group, one of the several emerging groups calling for an end to the political marginalization of the Isoko ethnic nationality. I enjoin you to sit back and relax as we bring you full details of today's package in just a moment. Don't go away.
Niger Delta Development Commission, NDDC, determined to make a difference.
Welcome back. And if you're just joining us, it's Inside the Niger Delta, the authentic voice of Nigeria's oil-rich region. Activities at the corporate headquarters of the Niger Delta Development Commission, NDDC, in Port Harcourt were brought to a standstill recently following the seal-off of its premises by the Rivers State Internal Revenue Service for alleged tax evasion. In the midst of its crisis, the Commission's top management had embarked on 2 foreign trips on official assignments, leaving most observers worried about the commitment of the NDDC in discharging its mandate to the beleaguered communities of the Niger Delta. Correspondent Chika Obodozie has details.
In July last year, officials of the Rivers State Internal Revenue Service, RSIS, were at the corporate headquarters of the NDDC in Port Harcourt with a court order to seal off its premises over alleged tax evasion. The shutdown of operations in the NDDC, according to the State Internal Revenue Service, followed the Commission's failure to remit withholding tax to the Rivers State government since 2014.
We have made frantic efforts to collect these revenues from them. They have not yielded a much desired result. So we resolved to approach the court. And it is the court that gave this order, the ex parte order that brought us here. The order is clear about the amount of money that they are owing us. And that's what we came here to recover. That is accruals, their own self-assessed withholding tax payments, accruals from penalty and interest that gave up about 1.8 billion. For goodness sake, tax is a creation of law. And what their professionals have been doing the calculation. So what they calculated is supposed to attract interest and penalty for late payments.
In his reaction to the allegation, Chijoke Amunadi, however, faulted the Rivers State government in its action.
What is embarrassing about this is that we already had made payments to them. What better goodwill is that? That we met with you and we agreed on what to do and we have begun to do it. So what's the justification for this? Except perhaps to embarrass the NDDC.
9 months after the dramatic tax feud occurred, the Rivers State Internal Revenue Service resumed its debt recovery mission in the month of April this year and sealed off the premises of the NDDC, banding another court injunction to justify its action. According to RSIS, its action was prompted by NDDC's refusal to open up its book for audit. This time, the total indebtedness of the NDDC was put at 50 billion naira, but the Commission insists that the figure does not reflect what is available in its records. A statement issued by the Commission's Director of Corporate Affairs, Charles Odili, had expressed surprise at the action of the Rivers State government despite efforts made in the month of January this year to meet its tax obligation to the state. For 8 days, the corporate headquarters of the NDDC was under lock and key, preventing the Commission from carrying out its statutory mandate to coordinate and promote development initiatives in the Niger Delta. In the midst of an obvious distraction begging for attention, the Commission's top management had embarked on a foreign trip to attend an offshore technology conference in Houston, Texas.
That same institution is not responsive to such allegations. Like coming out in the public to say, look, we have paid, these are our papers. Instead, they are gallivanting around the world, where they are, their presence is not like really needed, attending summits, with the same funds that were meant for the development of these regions. It tells the whole story of the embeddedness of corruption, of the institution in the Nigerian corruption, of the whole issue of the Nigerian factor that has taken over that institution. So that institution remains, a mistake of history, because when it was being established, we said it that the NDDC that has 9 states and is addressing issues of the Niger Delta that does not have 9 states is a huge aberration.
I'm an indigene of Upenekang, of a Sienutiarog in Upenekang, Ibon local government area, Akwa Ibom State. There is no road network, there is no light, even the mainland, there is no light. You hardly know that people are living in that environment. There is no water. The color of water we are using in that place is as yellowish. We call it Nkarafang in my language. That's the kind of water we are taking in that place. We are drinking, but we are Nigeria. We are Niger Delta.
The NDDC was established in the year 2000 through an act of parliament to intervene in the crisis of development rocking the Niger Delta region over the years. However, those who are supposed to benefit from the Commission's intervention have since scored it low in performance.
Where they have NDDC master plan, how is that plan tied to education? How is it tied to health of the people? How is it tied to industrialization, technology, and the rest? We can't see any connection. We just see people awarding contracts to themselves, becoming rich overnight, and so that they can afford the frivolities of life. We are not seeing genuine, development. Genuine development will tie education to the industry. So why do we need an NDDC to be constructing roads to people's houses? Is that what's going to boost production?
Despite claims in some quarters that the non-performance of the NDDC is attributable to paucity of funds to effectively operate the system, most critics of the Commission think otherwise. In addition to annual budgetary allocations made to the NDDC, it is also funded by other stakeholders in the oil and gas industry. Only last year, Anglo-Dutch oil giant Shell reportedly remitted the sum of $81.5 million to the NDDC as part of its contribution to the counterpart funding of the Commission.
NDDC is just an institution where the leadership of the minorities from the Niger Delta, where they dump the loot for them to share. It's not for the general interest of Niger Delta. If it was so, Nigeria as a nation is sponsoring a lot of fund into Niger Delta that could have at least developed some part of this. But it is not. The projects they bring up are white elephant projects. They are not projects that will be able to develop the mentality. First of all, you must be mentally developed before you be able to identify what is your right.
In spite of receipt of funds from several sources, including statutory allocation, the NDDC has always spent its funds without budgetary appropriation, a practice that not only breeds corruption but promotes misappropriation. Despite having spent its recurrent and capital expenditures for 2018, the NDDC is yet to have an approved budget for the year. 2 weeks ago, the Senate Committee on NDDC submitted its report on the 2018 NDDC budget to the Senate. The NDDC is already spending from its 2019 budget estimates with the hope of getting it approved sometime in 2020. Renowned economist Odilim Ewegbara says the EFCC needs to urgently visit the NDDC to get to the bottom of this financial irregularity.
You cannot spend, be it capital, be it recurrent, without appropriation. Because it's the appropriation that actually states the viability of the project, the availability of the fund, and the implementability of the project, and the possible oversight. NDDC shouldn't spend outside appropriation. NDDC must have its budget sent to the National Assembly, and National Assembly will scrutinize it to know if what they are presenting is possible in terms of revenue stream and in terms of expenditure and in terms of the importance of the projects. Anything spent outside the appropriation is criminal and is corruption. The National Assembly must call a hearing so that the whole country will know what has transpired. And of course, in the meantime, the EFCC must intervene because this is criminal.
The alleged non-performance of the NDDC is blamed on several factors, particularly the veiled political motive behind its establishment in 2000. Most concerned Niger Deltans have underscored, therefore, an urgent need to retool the NDDC and make it more relevant to the needs of the beleaguered Niger Delta communities.
They should give an account of all the monies they have spent, and they should demand that people who are truly committed to the cause of the region with experience, or a strong background in development should be the ones occupying those places, and they should come out with a plan that will be subjected to public scrutiny. Development is not for the sake of development. You don't just build I call it development. You building a project is not development in itself. It must be connected, and you must target outcomes that you want to achieve with measurable outcomes.
The ensuing tax feud between the Rivers State Internal Revenue Service and the NDDC is as scandalous as it is worrisome, particularly for the ordinary people faced with the persistent challenges of poverty and underdevelopment in the Niger Delta. It is incumbent on the NDDC to open up its books for an audit of its processes over the years. It is also expected that the Commission makes conscious efforts to avert a reoccurrence of such an avoidable scenario in the collective interest of the Niger Delta region.
Inside the Niger Delta.
Well, that was the people's verdict on the performance of the NDDC. We hope that urgent steps are taken to rebuild public confidence and trust in the Commission.
Inside the Niger Delta.